In the main hall of his castle, the demon lord of the first palace, Merlin Lucifer, sits quietly on his throne. His sister, whose name is Lilith, arrives, and she gets excited upon discovering that he's sleeping. Focusing on his lips, she gulps before leaning over. As it's rare to see her brother sleeping, she wants to take this opportunity to kiss him. However, she gets interrupted when the church squad demands the Demon King to fight them. Lilith gets annoyed at their ruckus, but still, she leans in for a kiss before a finger stops her. Merlin is awake, and he asks her what she's up to. Blushing, she tries to bite his finger, but he retracts it in time. Flicking her forehead, he berates her for messing around. She pouts, lamenting that she failed to kiss him, which makes Merlin smirk. Suddenly pulling her towards him, he tells her that no one in the world can land a surprise attack on him. Giddy, Lilith squeals that her brother is the best, but noises from outside interrupt the mood. Annoyed, she pulls out a whip and declares that she'll get rid of them for her brother. However, she gets stopped by Merlin, who tells her not to lose her temper over them. Smiling eagerly, he decides that since they came looking for trouble on the last day of his reign, he will personally send them to the afterlife. Merlin instructs his sister to stay close to him, to which she says yes. On the battlefield, Merlin's minions fight against the humans. Observing them, he comments that the battle is heating up, while Lilith wishes that the same would happen between Merlin and her too. Just then, Merlin spots a silver-haired woman with a sword and figures out that she's the hero. With a yell, she charges and destroys Merlin's rock monster. Still, he thinks that she looks weak. The hero's comrades praised her in awe of her fighting prowess. They're talking about how it's such an honor to fight with her, when a giant leech monster emerges from behind them. While they scream in terror, the hero's ice lance destroys the giant monster, leaving the men she saved stunned. With a kind smile, she tells them not to lose their focus in battle, which makes them teary-eyed by how kind she is. The silver-haired woman calls herself the 233rd hero, Alice Claudia, and she declares that she'll defeat the Demon King. Emboldened, her companions charge forward. In the distance, the church bishop is angry at the useless peasants who are hindering the hero's advance. His assistant calms him by saying that the peasants are just cannon fodder. Once they all die, the church army will swoop in and claim victory. However, he's worried about whether the hero can defeat the Demon King. The bishop loudly laughs, saying it's fine if she loses as they have a secret weapon. Meanwhile, Alice notices that her companions are overwhelmed by the monsters. She moves to save them. When the bishop summons the weapon, he declares that the church has been preparing for 100 years. As a large flying whale appears, he calls it the most fearsome weapon on the continent. The fighting stops as everyone stares at it. The bishop commands the whale to attack, shocking Alice as this will wipe out the entire vanguard squad. Horrified, she realizes she can't make it in time to save them. Merlin clicks his tongue, calling the whale ugly, while humans and his minions brace themselves for the attack. With a mighty boom, the whale's laser cannon hits them, and the bishop boldly declares that he sentences the demons to hell. When the smoke clears, Alice sees the backs of a man and a woman. Both humans and monsters are alive, which confuses them. Merlin says that of course, they're not dead as only he can decide whether they live or die. He challenges the men from church to come at him, and the bishop, who's in utter disbelief, gets angry. His assistant asks him if they should retreat as the Demon King is much stronger than they anticipated, but the bishop declares that there's nothing to fear as the church's whale is on their side. Convinced that the Demon King will not be able to withstand the whale's body slam, he commands it to attack. Merlin comments on how weak the whale is, but he decides to humor them. As the whale's jaws head toward him, Merlin says that he'll deal with it with the barest unsheathing of his sword. In the next moment, the whale is already sliced in half by his blade. Lilith fangirls, Alice is wide-eyed, and while the whale's halved body falls, his minions, the bishop, and the rest of the humans drop their mouths in shock. When the two pieces of the whale finally land heavily on the ground, Merlin sheathes his sword, which his sister finds utterly cool. While Alice is taken aback by his strength, the men from church become horrified. Merlin tells them that it's their turn next. As the Demon King of the first palace, he declares that he'll grant them glorious deaths. The bishop pleads for Alice to save them, and as the hero, she must stop him. Gripping her sword tightly, she challenges him to a duel. When she's about to attack, his power blasts from his body, pushing her back. He unsheathes his sword once again, but he doesn't attack her. His blade's powerful strike is aimed at the bishop and the church's army. which obliterates them before the attack even lands. Alice gets thrown even farther back by the force wall, and a resounding boom fills the whole area. The bishop's cap floats uselessly in the air, and not even a single soldier survived. Merlin glances at the unconscious hero. The final battle of Demon King Merlin has just ended, but it also marks the beginning of the story between the jobless Demon King and the hero. Merlin was once a human summoned into another world by the altar. Though he was born powerful, he's also cursed. His lifespan shortens as he suffers heart touches throughout every moment of his life. Fortunately, his demon sword called Aeternum augments its user's life each time it's used to slay powerful enemies. With it, he manages to temporarily alleviate the effects of his curse. The stronger the enemy that he slays with his sword, the greater the effects the sword's ability has on him. Merlin wishes to one day meet with the strongest person in the world and defeat him, as he believes it will lift his curse. He tells himself that it's finally over, that he's no longer needed in the demon palace. Planning to leave soon, he gets approached by Lilith. He tells her not to be upset before instructing her to take care of herself once he's gone. She tries to protest, and tears pour down her face as she begs him not to leave her behind. Fondly, he reminds her that she's already a big girl. He clutches his chest, asking her if she'd rather that he die, as the curse will eventually kill him. She hugs him, saying she doesn't want that to happen too. She proposes that if his curse relapses, he can use her life to extend his. Shocked, Merlin flicks her forehead and calls her a foolish girl. He tells her that he can never do that to her. She tells him she doesn't want him to leave, and she wouldn't even care if he turns into a useless NEET, which makes him wince. Chuckling, Merlin tells her that he loves her, but he must go. Once he finally lifts his curse, he swears to return and never leave her again. He tells her that not even death will tear them apart. Lilith blushes, utterly delighted. She feels like he cheated by saying all that, as she can no longer continue to be willful. Before he goes, she has a piece of advice for him, making him curious. She warns him that there are a lot of hussies out there, so he needs to watch out, or else she'll kill them all. She'll pull their hair out, skin them alive, roast them over lava, and turn them into meat jerky before eating them all up. Shocked, Merlin only realizes now that his sister is a yandere. Quickly, he bids her goodbye, and upon passing by the unconscious hero, he notices that she's having a good sleep. He hoists her over his shoulder, which shocks Lilith. Menacingly, she asks Merlin if the hussies have already appeared, and he quickly explains that the woman is going to be his slave. As he doesn't know much of the world outside, he needs a gopher with him during his journey. He tells her that though the woman is too weak for a hero, her stamina and willpower are somewhat decent, so she'll be useful to keep around. Lilith pouts, saying he should just kill her as she's a hero, but he tells her it's fine. Once the sun sets, he'll no longer be a demon king. He waves her farewell as he assures her that he would never fall for a hero. Lilith is sad to see him leave, but she tries to shake away her sadness by recalling his words. She blushes and deems what he said to her as a confession. She can't wait to meet him again. Becoming determined, she plans to complete her bridal training before he returns. She'll then capture his heart as a virtuous wife. Meanwhile, Merlin and Alice are about to start their journey together. While Merlin carries Alice on his back, her unconscious mind wonders if she lost. Ever since she left the mountains, a lot has happened to her. She fell for the words of flattery told to her by the people from the church. She thought she could defeat the Demon King, but seeing how he easily killed the church's ultimate weapon, she realizes they were not even in the same league. Her master had told her that she was still lacking in cultivation and that she'll face many difficulties against strong opponents. Alice only now realizes that her master's words were true. Meanwhile, Merlin spots the wreckage of some boats by the shore. Depositing the hero against a coconut tree, he tells himself that he needs to think of another way to get a boat. After he leaves, the sleeping Alice attracts the attention of a beast with long and sharp teeth. Its drool drips on her, and she wakes up, only to find a large demon wolf before her. Alice is scared, and as the wolf is about to pounce on her, she realizes she's done for, as she can't escape. With superhuman speed, Merlin intercepts the wolf's attack and instructs the beast to stand down. The demon wolf growls, and Merlin tells it that it can't eat her as she is his. While the wolf calms down, the hero realizes with a blush that she's been saved by the man again, making her heart skip. The wolf becomes putty in Merlin's hands, and Alice can't help but think that the radiant smile on his face is not of a villain's. Shaking her head, she adamantly reminds herself that he's the Demon King. Saving her means that he has some ulterior motives. After sending the wolf on its way, Merlin turns to her and asks her if her name is indeed Alice. Immediately, she goes into defense, summoning her sword and asking him what he wants. In her vision, he looks extra sinister when he asks her what she thinks he'd want from her. as Alice thinks that he has perverted intentions toward her. While Merlin introduces himself, she charges toward him with her sword, which he easily stops. Alice is shocked while Merlin merely hums. He grasps her chin, calling her a pretty little lady before declaring that from then on, her body belongs to him. She whimpers before slapping his hand away. She demands that he not humiliate her, as she would never bow to an evil being like him. He stares at her before shrugging, saying that she misunderstood something, as it's neither a request nor a negotiation. He declares that he is her kidnapper before coming toward her and trapping her against a tree. With a smile, he tells her that he's a gentle person, which makes Alice blush. She concludes that he wants her to submit to him, but still, she wants to make it clear what he wants her to do. After thinking for a bit, he smiles at her evilly before saying that he'll have her body do something very unreasonable and inhumane, which horrifies her. Alice knows that some demons can impregnate human females, but she doesn't want that to happen to her, as she hasn't even gone on her first date yet. Merlin grabs her hand and tries to drag her with him, but when she resists, he clicks his tongue in annoyance and carries her bridal style. He tells her not to blame him if he gets rough, and a moment later, he tosses her on a boat. With a sinister smile, he announces that they should start, while Alice yells that he should stay back. With her sword in hand, Alice glares at Merlin. Gritting her teeth, she threatens to kill herself if he's going to force himself on her. Noticing the oars by her feet, Merlin stomps on one end of an oar, which then hits her face, making her drop her sword. Alice whimpers in pain while clutching her face. Merlin scoffs, wondering how a dumb chick like her became a hero. With tears in her eyes, she tells him there's no need for him to get violent if he wants to get it on with her. Scoffing once again, he tells her that her washboard body is unlikely to get him into any kind of mood. Flustered, she takes offense at what he said, saying her body is normal for a girl her age, but he calls out her lie, saying he knows there's a metal plate in front of her chest, as it was chafing his back when he was carrying her. Embarrassed, she tries to tell him that it was her mithril armor, which makes Merlin laugh that she uses armor as breast pads. Annoyed, she asks him why he kidnapped her then, and he points toward the oars beside her. He declares they're sailing across the Strait of Orkney to enter the territory of Great Britain, stunning Alice. She tells him that would be impossible, as even the church's warships need hundreds of oarsmen, assisted with wind magic, and a whole day to cross the ocean. Not to mention the countless sea creatures lurking within it that even saint-ranked individuals have trouble fighting against. She continues to say that even if they take turns rowing, it'll be impossible for them to make it out alive. They'll just end up as shark bait. Merlin chuckles, saying she misunderstood again, as he told her he plans to have her body do some unreasonable things, so the one who'll be rowing the boat will only be her. As for him, he'll just stand and enjoy the cool sea breeze. Baffled, Alice stares at him uncomprehendingly, before shouting in disbelief. 3 days later, the sea has become rough due to the storm. While Alice rows, she comments that it's weird that they're yet to see any sea creatures planning to attack them. Merlin replies that it's because there's a big monster following right behind them that keeps all the small fries away. He tells her to sit tight since he can't swim. If she falls off the boat, she'll be on her own. Alice tells him that she once heard him destroy a sea monster with his bare hands, which Merlin confirms to be true. Suddenly, a sea monster emerges from the depths. Merlin declares that this monster is much bigger than the one he killed. The monster capsizes their boat, tossing them in the air. As they fall, Merlin kicks the edge of the boat to make it land upright in the water, and the two of them land on it just in time. The sea monster roars ferociously, and judging by its size, Alice realizes that it could be the Overlord of Orkney, who sank Britain's Royal Navy and killed 2 saint-ranked magicians on board. Wondering if he can fight the monster, she asks him what they should do, but Merlin doesn't reply. The sky rumbles while the sea creature looks at them meanly. Alice becomes silent before quickly spiraling into despair. She looks up when she hears snickering. It's Merlin, who's pointing at the monster and calling it ugly. Laughing boisterously now, he loudly says that though the monster's neck is so thick, its head is small. Alice is frustrated that he's still in the mood to make fun of the Lord of Orkney. Angry, the sea monster raises its tail and slams it into the surface of the water, creating even bigger waves. Alice asks him how they're going to fight a monster whose power can rival that of nature. The monster continues to thrash in the water, the resulting waves tossing their boat about. Merlin clicks his tongue and draws his sword, facing the behemoth that is about to plow into them. The sea monster roars, launching itself toward them, and Merlin responds by unsheathing his sword. After executing a wide slash, he smirks while Alice watches wide-eyed. The sea monster freezes, and somehow, the turbulent waters start to calm down a bit. With a flick of his sword, Merlin returns Aeternum to its scabbard. He turns his back on the monster, scoffing at how easy it is. Alice is still not moving due to shock, so Merlin pinches her cheek. He tells her to start rowing, but she protests, pointing at the sea creature behind him. However, a second later, the behemoth's body clacks, before collapsing to pieces and falling into the ocean. Merlin merely asks her what she was saying. He tells her that if she doesn't start rowing, man-eating sharks will turn her into shark bait. Alice gets to work while she stares at Merlin pensively. She muses that even on the ocean, he's unbelievably strong. If she allows him to arrive in a country of humans, there could be dire consequences.